Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and this is Elite Dangerous. I've finally travelled away from NGC 7822 and I'm heading off to the Soul and Heart Nebulas. They're out slightly more toward the outer edge of the galaxy, although there's still another 5,000 or so light years before that. But I've stopped off on my way somewhat and seen a number of rather lovely sights out here. The planet we just saw was something I parked in orbit over to capture a little bit of a time lapse, and here we see quite a few yellow stars sitting in orbit around each other. Just a couple of places that I thought worthwhile stopping off at and having a look at. Now, as I was travelling out toward the Heart Nebula and the Soul Nebula, I noticed in the distance a small cluster of stars, and it caught my attention because it stood out a little bit like the stars back at NGC 7822, and I wondered if that perhaps they were a cluster of large blue-white stars. So I decided to take a slight detour and head toward them. It was a little bit difficult to find them on the galactic map because they don't stand out in an obvious manner. They're not highlighted in any way. But as I started travelling further out that way, I did manage to get closer, and they are listed as 2 mass. That's number 2 and MASS. So I finally managed to jump into the cluster there, and it was indeed a bunch of blue-white stars. And of course, they were there with a good number of black holes and some rather unusual and very strange planetary configurations. And this one in particular is perhaps the weirdest system and the most unusual system that I've seen so far in the game. And we'll get to the system map in just a second and have a look. And I've really had to wonder if perhaps the map's bugged out a little bit here. As you can see, it is very, very odd, the ring system around the sun there. And this is the first time I've seen a ring system around the sun, and it seems absolutely massive, that it perhaps covers a good number of light seconds. But that wasn't to be quite the case. As I got up closer, it was rendered slightly different. And as you can see, there's a few black holes in this system as well. So yes, this layout of this particular star cluster is quite a lot like NGC 7822, particularly because it has so many suns here. But like I say, I wonder if perhaps this place is bugged a little bit. At any rate, I decided to take a closer look at the sun there. How could I not? There's 2 things I'm really keen on to see in this game at the moment, or 2 things I'm really intent on discovering out this way. And one of them is an Earth-like planet. I still haven't actually found one yet. And the other thing, the thing I really most want to see, is a full-on star with a ring system around it. And I know they do exist out there. So I was in the hopes that maybe I'd found one here, even though on the system map it did seem to be rendered rather oddly. Now, just to be clear, I have seen a number of brown dwarfs with rings around them, although when you're really in them they don't look that much different to a ring around a regular gas giant. So seeing one around the sun would be something rather special for me, and something that would be quite rewarding for the amount of time I've actually spent travelling out this way. I've chosen the object from the navigation panel here on the left that I reckon is most likely to be the correct star, and I've judged that based on the distance that star actually is for me, along with the information on the semi-major axis that I found on that star in the system map, which we can have another look at here. I think it was around about 6 astronomical units or so. A single astronomical unit is around about 500 light seconds, and an astronomical unit is the distance of the Earth to the Sun. So When you see here it says 0.11 astronomical unit, that's roughly 1/10 of the distance between the Earth and the Sun, so around about 50 light seconds or so. A close second to finding a sun with a ring system around it would be to find a very close up gas giant with a ring system to a star where it's orbiting very, very close, as that would also give a very similar feel, I would have thought. Of course, there's one other thing I've yet to find in the game, although I have seen pictures of these around the internet, and that is a Earth-like planet with a ring system around it. Another combination that would be somewhat unique and something I still have yet to see actually in the game. But look at the size of that ring there. There is a small gas giant underneath there with another ring system inside of it. Judging from the system map here, it would seem that these planets would actually be inside the radius of that ring, but again I suspect that's simply been rendered incorrectly on the system map here, but we won't know for sure until we actually get out there and have a look for ourselves. But yeah, plenty of things to go out and see here. After the events you saw in the previous episode with me and black holes, I'm going to try and steer clear of them for the moment. There's nothing too spectacular to see around them, and I tend to get a little bit too close and end up getting sucked in and half wrecking the ship, and I really want to get back to civilized space fully intact. I've still got to reach the Sol Nebula, and that's quite a few thousand light years from here, and then I've got to make the way all the way back to civilized space to sell the information I've been gathering out here. Now, not particularly after the money at all, but I would like to have a good collection of systems listed that I've actually discovered, so yeah, that's going to be a bit of a trek to do that. So we're getting down here, 10,000 light seconds, a fair way away. Let's make a small cut here, I think. So we're getting closer to what I think is the sun, and the surface scanner has just kicked in, so this will actually tell us whether it is the correct one or not. And we're at 2 mass D1. So let's have a look at the system map and see if it's the correct one. If it's not the correct one, it should also help us find the correct one, because it will give us the indication of the correct way to go. But yep, I managed to find the correct star first time there. Quite handy. Now, that large ring there, it doesn't seem to be actually there in the galaxy area, in the space area. I would have thought if it is actually the size it is actually indicating there on the system map, we'd be able to see it even from this distance, but maybe not. Maybe we need to get a little bit closer, even if it is anywhere near to being close as large as it is there on the system map. And then again, it may well not be, and it may be a little itty bitty ring system that we can barely see. Who knows? One thing I'm kind of curious about in most of the videos I've actually done so far on Elite is people's interest level in the various asteroid fields and the inner side of the ring systems. I've noticed, having a look on my videos and the general level of interest in there, that interest tends to drop off a little bit whenever I go exploring inside an asteroid field, and I'm kind of curious about that, because asteroid fields are the things that tend to interest me the most. And please bear with me a minute if that is a case that a lot of you aren't interested in here. I can imagine a little dip in viewing figures here as people tend to wander off a little bit bored. Please keep with me. If I do go into an asteroid field here, it won't be too long, but as I say, I'm curious as to why that would be, because really the asteroids are one of the, to me, best visual areas in the game, and I actually love flying through them. I could spend hours doing it. So I do find it curious why other people may not find it quite so interesting, and I'd be interested to hear your reasons if you'd be so inclined to list them for me in the comment section below. Right, so here we can see the sun does indeed have a ring system. It's nowhere near as large as what's indicated on the system map, but it is present, but it is very, very faint. Now, the faintness could be due to the amount of light coming from the star, or it could be just because it's a very, very sparse number of asteroids in here. But I'm going to get close. I want to try and drop off inside this ring system if I possibly can, but it will be dependent on how close this sun actually lets me get. I'm actually getting a proximity warning, and now I'm getting an impact warning already, so it's possible the ship's just going to be suddenly pulled out of warp, and I could suffer a little bit of damage as I'm still going 1/3 the speed of light. I'm getting a little bit of warning light there, so I'm going to have to move over a little bit to attempt to keep away from the sun. I would have thought I could get a little bit closer here, as the fuel scoop hasn't even kicked in yet. So I don't really know what I'm getting the proximity warning from. Maybe from the ring itself, but I'm not close enough to the ring to be getting this. So yes, one way or another, this system does seem to have its fair share of bugs or issues going on, and the impact light has come up again. So I suspect I'm going to have a bit of a problem in here in a second, but I'm still going to keep going. I'm going to keep my speed down to take the minimum amount of damage possible if and when I do crash into something here. But I really do want to take the chance to see what happens. Oh, and there we go. I've actually got too close to something. Right, I only took 1% damage there, and that was because I was expecting it and made sure I kept slow. But no asteroids and no ring system, and I can't even see the faint edge of the ring system that I could see when I was at a distance from the sun. Very strange and very curious. I wonder what's going on here. A strange space anomaly. Who would have thought? Let's just check that my modules haven't taken any undue damage here. Everything looks pretty much at the levels it was previously, so I think I'm good to go in that regards. Oh, my advanced discovery scanner may be a little bit lower there at 89%. Anyway, let's try and fly upwards and outwards and get away from this rather dead end, I would call it. It was something that actually turned out to be a bit of a nothing, but nonetheless a very unusual area and something worth taking a look at. Assuming I'm not trapped here, of course. Dropping out again. So I'm obviously too close to something, even though I can't see what that something is, and my ship's instruments aren't even telling me what that something is. I'm certainly not mass locked, and I'm certainly not too close to that sun. As I said, my fuel scoop hasn't even kicked in. Let's try turning away from where I think the invisible asteroid field must be, and try fly away from it a little bit. I'm going to boost it a few times here, and then try and get back into Super Cruise again. I really don't want to be trapped out here this far from home. It would be a bit of a sad end to my journey, wouldn't it? I'd rather get sucked down that black hole. Well, I don't know how you all would feel about me spending the entirety of the next episode stuck in one location of space like this. I guess I could face the ship in random directions and just look at the star constellations out there and maybe make an episode up like that. Or perhaps, if I'm lucky, we can escape this area. Let's keep boosting, and I'll try the old jump drive again in a second, and maybe we'll be fortunate this time. Come on, we can get out of here. There's no gravity well, and we've been stuck in worse locations, that's for sure. And yes, we're out. Good. You know, perhaps I should take that as a warning and keep away from the strange looking areas of space. But what would be the point of exploration if I was going to do that? Let's move on and see what else is in this rather unusual system. But yeah, look, you can definitely see a ring there of some type. And again, I'm getting the proximity warning, even though I'm quite a long way from it. So, one way or another, something's not rendering quite right there. And again, I'm getting the warning light. I'm going to turn tail and run before I get stuck in there again. Well, the 2-mass star cluster turned out to be quite an interesting diversion. It was unfortunately a little bit too similar to NGC 7822 with all the huge amount of black holes and blue-white stars, but nevertheless it's an area of space that is worth having a look at if you're out this way. So I'm now heading off to the Sol Nebula, and you can see it here somewhat in the distance. It's about 1,000 light years away or so at this point, but it shouldn't take too much longer, hopefully. And we're getting a little bit closer here now. It shouldn't be any more than a few jumps now. Kinda excited to get in there now. After being in this black space for so long, I miss the inside of the nebulas. So the next jump is the one that's going to take me right into the centre of the Sol Nebula out here. I've still got high hopes that I can find an Earth-like planet out here. That's my quest and mission out here whilst I'm exploring. Well, let's jump in there and have a look. Maybe this time. I'm not planning on a particularly long stay in the Sol Nebula. I may take a brief tour into the Heart Nebula after this. They're all looking a little bit similar to much of the stuff you've seen, but nonetheless they're interesting places to explore. But after this, the choice is now pretty much down to the toss of a coin as to whether I head out to the further edges of the rim or head back to civilized space with the data I've got. By the time this video is live, the 1.1 update is going to be available, giving me 1,000 light year mapping, with mapping available. And there's a few things I'd like to be back in core space to check out, so it probably won't be a bad idea to head back and get some repairs and sell the information I've gathered thus far, and then perhaps head in a different direction for the next leg of the journey. Let's take a look at the nebula here. I'm going to deactivate the HUD and the orbit lines, and as we travel further away from the sun, the nebula should slowly fade into view, and hopefully it's a rather nice sight to see. And yeah, slowly it's starting to reveal itself to us there, though one of the darker nebulas to be sure, it would seem. So up until this point, the hunt for a valuable planet had been somewhat unsuccessful, with me only being able to find a bunch of gas giants and rocky planets. But here I made what appears to be a potentially interesting discovery. Maybe that's a water world, which holds a good value at the stellar cartographics and is also usually quite a visually appealing planet to take a look at. So I thought we'd go out that way and have a look before finally wrapping the episode up. Let's see what we can find. Is it going to be something worthwhile? Now, I've showed this trick once or twice before, and it's to fly up away from the sun and look directly down at the orbit lines, and you can then count out your way from the orbit lines. You've got one right at the centre there. I want the fifth one, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the fifth one there. That should be the fifth planet away from the sun, as indicated on the system map here. The belt system doesn't count, and yeah, that should get me where I want to go. And that is a little bit more effective than just simply using the navigation panel on the left. So it looks like we're heading toward the correct location, and the system scan, or the surface scan, has just started to kick in there. Let's hope it's something good. Come on, surface scanner, hurry yourself up a little bit. And it's a water world. That's exactly what it looked like. on the system map there. There's not that many of these out here, and they're one of the more valuable objects to discover. Some of the other most valuable objects are the black holes and high metal content planets. Water worlds are usually very good because sometimes they can be candidates for terraforming, which of course makes them very valuable to the civilized folk back at home. And as we approach, we can see, yep, there's definitely an atmosphere there and a nice cloud layer. Quite a lovely looking planet. Kevin Costner would probably love it. That was a bit of a cheap joke, wasn't it? So I think I'm going to park in orbit here around this rather lovely planet and consider my destinations for the next episode. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time. This has been Obsidian Ant, signing off.